Hello friends, good morning. Here in the Philippines, it's 1:21 a.m. and I hope you are okay and ready to join me in this live reading of Magnifica Humanitas, and we are in part 4. We're done with 1, 2, 3, and we're done with paragraphs 1 to 89. And just to connect all the parts, or at least the last part 3 to this part 4, I'd like to read again the last paragraph that we had read last time. So that was paragraph 89, and then I'll proceed to chapter 3, which is the focus of our part 4 of this live reading of Magnifica Humanitas, the Papal Encyclical of Pope Leo XIV on safeguarding the human person in the time of artificial intelligence. So let us start, and I hope you're ready. So this is paragraph 89. Living out justice in the church means purifying ecclesial relationships and structures from distortions that give rise to inequality, lack of transparency, and abuse of power. In this regard, listening to the victims of spiritual, economic, institutional, sexual, and power-based abuse, as well as abuses of conscience, is an integral part of a journey toward justice, which includes acknowledging the harm done, just reparation, and taking steps to prevent it from happening again. Every power is at the service of communion and mission. All authority is at the service of the people of God. This ministry of service is expressed not only through our faith celebrated and lived in the sacraments and in the adoption of a synodal style, but also in the complete sharing of goods. Following the example of the early church, ecclesial resources need to be shared so that no one among us may be in need, and so that their administration may support the mission of proclaiming the gospel to the poorest. Regular assessments of the exercise of ministerial responsibilities should be encouraged, not as judgments on individuals, but as tools for learning and correction oriented toward mission. Only to the extent that we are open to the action of the Holy Spirit will these principles of social doctrine become incarnate in ecclesial life. In this way, the Church will be able to bear credible witness to society that seeking the common good together with shared responsibility and fraternity is not a utopia, but a real possibility. Chapter 3, Technology and Dominance, the Grandeur of Humanity in Light of the Promises of AI. Having recalled the principles that shine a light on social doctrine, I would now like to focus on certain challenges that profoundly shape our way of living together, or living today. The biblical image accompanying these reflections is that of a building project. On the one hand, there is the Tower of Babel, where collective effort follows a plan that dominates and ultimately dehumanizes, Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 to 9. On the other hand, there are the ruins of Jerusalem, which under Nehemiah's direction are rebuilt piece by piece as a project of shared responsibility. Nehemiah 2-6. We are called to reflect on the great construction sites of our era and ask, what are we building? As technological development rapidly transforms languages, relationships, institutions, and forms of power, we believers must and can choose which projects to work on and in what manner, so as to safeguard and value the grandeur of humanity that has been given to us as a gift. This is a choice not only for our future, but also for our present. Since artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies are already part of our daily lives. I am convinced that the concrete way of living out social relationships in the light of the gospel is not established once and for all, but remains a task entrusted from generation to generation to the Christian community. Under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, the Church allows herself to be enlightened by God's Word, reads the signs of the times, and creatively seeks new ways for relationships between peoples and nations to become ever more conformed to the demands of the kingdom of God. For this reason, I encourage all members of the Church not to be afraid of the present challenges, but to listen to one another and firmly embrace their responsibilities in building a more humane and fraternal society. The technocratic paradigm and digital power. In his Encyclical Laudato Si, Pope Francis denounced the growing dominance of technocratic paradigm in our globalized world, the tendency to let the logic of efficiency, control, and profit alone shape personal, social, and economic decisions. This makes it clear that technology is not simply a tool. When it becomes the standard by which everything is judged, it begins to dictate what matters and what can be discarded, reducing creation to an object of exploitation and human beings to mere cogs in a system driven toward ever greater efficiency. This paradigm has spread rapidly in recent years, fueled in part by the expansion of artificial intelligence, cognitive science, nanotechnology, robotics, and biotechnology. In themselves, these innovations can greatly serve integral human development and the care of our common home. Yet, precisely because of their power, they can also hasten the expansion of the technocratic paradigm and therefore require a new spiritual, ethical, and political framework. More power does not necessarily imply something better. In this respect, the words of Romano Guardini remain relevant. Contemporary man has not been trained to use power well. The danger of humanity becoming a victim of its own achievements was already clearly recognized by St. Paul VI, who warned that the most extraordinary scientific progress, the most outstanding technical feats, and the most amazing economic growth, unless accompanied by authentic moral and social progress, will in the long run go against man. For this reason, technological progress, valuable in itself, requires careful discernment of the anthropological vision that guides it and the ends it pursues. If technological development advances without a corresponding ethical and social progress, the result may be an increase in means without a growth in humanity. Having more without being more. In such a scenario, there is a risk that individuals will be evaluated principally according to the outcomes they produce. Here, we must recognize another crucial aspect, which I have noted earlier. In many cases, within the digital context, control over platforms, infrastructure, data and computing power does not rest with states, but with major economic and technological actors. These entities effectively set the conditions for access, determine the rules of visibility, and shape the very possibilities for participation. When such power is concentrated in the hands of a few, it tends to become opaque and evade public oversight, increasing the risk of distorted forms of development that give rise to new dependencies, exclusions, manipulations, and inequalities. Faced with this concentration of power in the digital world, the criteria for judgment and discernment in this new situation are the noble principles of social doctrine, the inalienable dignity of the human person, the common good, the universal destination of goods, subsidiarity, solidarity, and social justice. They demand that we assess whether the power of digital infrastructures and algorithms truly fosters participation and responsibility, protects the vulnerable, ensures fair access to opportunities, and remains directed toward the good of all. On this basis, we can now examine more closely what artificial intelligence is, the possibilities it opens up, and the risks it entails. Artificial intelligence. It is not my intention here to offer a comprehensive treatment of artificial intelligence, nor to give an overview of the extensive relevant literature, since authoritative contributions already exist, including within the ecclesial context. I limit myself to recalling a few essential elements for a moral and social discernment that safeguards the primacy of the human person in order to ensure that it will always be human intelligence with its conscience and freedom that guides technical innovations and responsibly determines their use and limits. excuse me, it is appropriate to preface this discussion with two considerations. First, any statement regarding AI risks becoming quickly outdated, given the remarkable pace at which these systems are developing. Second, all of us, including those who designed them, possess only a limited understanding of their actual functioning. Indeed, current AI systems are more cultivated than built. For developers do not directly design every detail, but instead create a framework within which the intelligence grows. As a result, fundamental scientific aspects such as the internal representations and computational processes of these systems remain at present unknown. There thus emerges an urgent need for twofold commitment. On the one hand, a deepening of scientific research. On the other, the exercise of moral and spiritual discernment. It is not possible to provide a single comprehensive definition of AI. What can be stated, however, is that we must avoid the misconception of equating this type of intelligence, quote-unquote intelligence, with that of human beings. These systems merely imitate certain functions of human intelligence. In doing so, they often surpass intelligence in speed and computational capacity, offering tangible benefits across many fields. Yet this power remains entirely tied to data processing. So-called artificial intelligences do not undergo experiences, do not possess a body, do not feel joy or pain, do not mature through relationships, and do not know from within what love, work, friendship, or responsibility mean. Nor do they have a moral conscience, since they do not judge good and evil, grasp the ultimate meaning of situations, or bear responsibility for consequences. They may imitate language, behavior, and analytical skills, or even simulate empathy and understanding, but they do not understand what they produce, for they lack the affective, relational, and spiritual perspective through which human beings grow in wisdom. Even when these tools are described as capable of learning, their way of doing so is different from that of a human person. It is not the experience of those who allow themselves to be shaped by life and grow over time through choices, mistakes, forgiveness, and fidelity. Rather, it is a form of statistical adaptation based on data and feedback, which can be very effective but does not imply inner growth. A valuable tool that requires vigilance. In light of what has been said, we can better understand why AI can be a valuable tool and at the same time why it calls for a measured and vigilant approach. In recent years, its private use has expanded significantly, prompting growing reflection on both the opportunities it offers and the risks tied to its rapid spread. In personal use, three aspects in particular deserve careful consideration: the ease with which results are obtained, the impression of objectivity, and the simulation of human communication. The speed and simplicity with which information, complex analysis, media content, and practical assistance can be accessed undoubtedly makes life easier. Yet they can also encourage excessive reliance and the search for ready-made answers, and weaken personal creativity and judgment. The apparent objectivity of the responses and suggestions these systems provide can lead us to overlook the fact that they reflect the cultural assumptions of those who designed and trained them, with all their strengths and limitations. The artificial imitation of positive human communication, words of advice, empathy, friendship, and even love, can be engaging and at times genuinely helpful. However, for less discerning users, it can also be misleading, creating the illusion of a relationship with a real personal subject. When words are simulated, they do not build genuine relationships, but only their appearance. The artificial imitation of care or support can become particularly risky when it enters contexts where real relationships and emotional bonds are lacking. Here, the danger is not so much that a person may believe they are communicating with another person, but rather that they may gradually lose the very desire to form genuine human connections. Broadening our perspective to the use of AI in society, we see that it is now embedded in decision-making processes across many sectors and at multiple levels, in communication, management, and control. The gains in efficiency and the potential to improve certain services are clear, yet rapidly and uncritically adopting them exposes us to a range of risks, including the tendency to overlook the environmental impact. Current AI systems require enormous amounts of energy and water, significantly influencing carbon dioxide emissions, and place heavy demands on natural resources. As their complexity increases, especially in the case of large language models, the need for computing power and storage capacity grows too, which requires an extensive network of machines, cables, data centers, and energy-intensive infrastructure. For this reason, it is essential to develop more sustainable technological solutions that reduce environmental impact, and help protect our common home. Responsibility, transparency, and the governance of AI. The use of AI is never a purely technical matter. When it enters processes that affect people's lives, it touches on rights, opportunities, status, and freedom. Important and sensitive decisions concerning employment, credit, access to public services, or even a person's reputation risk being fully delegated to automated systems that do not know compassion, mercy, forgiveness, and above all, the hope that people are able to change, and can therefore give rise to new forms of exclusion. There are clearly harmful uses, such as the manipulation of information, or violations of privacy. Yet there is also a subtler danger, for when AI systems present themselves as neutral and objective, they end up reflecting and reinforcing the stereotypes or ideological bias of their designers and developers. Indeed, entrusting an algorithm in practice with the power to select who is worthy or not, without anyone bearing responsibility for that judgment, is to hand over the task of redefining the boundaries of human possibilities. In this process, political responsibility is also lost, not just empathy toward those excluded, which can after all be simulated. The exclusion of the vulnerable becomes cloaked in a veneer of neutrality and objectivity, against which it becomes difficult to raise objections. In this way, injustice goes unnoticed, and compassion, mercy, and forgiveness, understood not as mere appearances but as real political actions, gradually disappear from view. From this follows a simple but compelling consequence. We cannot consider AI to be morally neutral. In reality, every technical tool embodies choices and priorities through what it measures, ignores, and optimizes, and how it classifies people and situations. If a system is designed or used in a way that treats some lives as less worthy or excludes them without the possibility of appeal, then it is not merely a tool to be used well, since it has already introduced criteria that contradict the inalienable dignity of the human person. For this reason, ethical discernment cannot be limited to asking whether we are using a system for good or bad purposes. It must also examine how that system is designed and what vision of the human person and society is embedded in the data and models that guide it. For AI to respect human dignity and truly serve the common good, responsibility must be clearly defined at every stage. from those who design and develop these systems to those who use them and rely on them for concrete decisions. In many cases, however, the internal processes leading to a result remain opaque, making it harder to assign responsibility and correct errors. This is where accountability becomes crucial. The possibility of identifying who must account for decisions, justify them, monitor them, and when necessary, challenge them and remedy any harm caused. Calling for prudence, rigorous evaluation, and even at times, a slower pace in adopting AI does not mean opposing progress. Instead, it is an exercise of responsible care for the human family. This need is all the more urgent given the frequent imbalance between the speed of technological growth and the slower development of awareness, norms, safeguards, and institutions capable of governing its effects. It is not enough to invoke ethics in the abstract. Robust legal frameworks, independent oversight, informed users, and a political system that does not abdicate its responsibility are required. Otherwise, change will be governed only by technocratic thinking and presented as necessary and inevitable, ultimately imposing rules shaped by those who control data, infrastructure, and computing power. We cannot be satisfied with merely calling for the moralization of machines, the so-called alignment of AI with human values, without also having the courage to insist on a further condition: the possibility of openly discussing the ethical frameworks involved in and subjecting them to shared standards of social justice. Otherwise, those who control AI will impose their own moral vision, which will become the invisible infrastructure of these systems. A more moral AI is not enough if that morality is determined by a few. What is needed is a more active political involvement that is capable of slowing things down when everything is accelerating, and of protecting the opportunities for communities still to be able to participate and ask questions. In fact, as with every major technological shift, AI tends to amplify the power of those who already possess economic resources, expertise, and access to data. In light of the common good and the universal destination of goods, this raises serious concerns, since small but highly influential groups can shape information and consumption patterns, influence democratic processes, and steer economic dynamics to their own advantage, undermining social justice and solidarity among peoples. For this reason, it is essential that the use of AI, especially when it touches on public goods and fundamental rights, be guided by clear criteria and effective oversight, grounded in participation and subsidiarity. Communities and intermediary organizations must not be reduced to passive recipients of decisions made elsewhere. They must be able to contribute to discernment and oversight. Moreover, ownership of data cannot be left solely in private hands, but must be appropriately regulated. Data is the product of many contributors and should not be treated as something to be sold off or entrusted to a select few. It is necessary to think creatively in order to manage data as a common or shared good in a spirit of participation, as St. John Paul II already suggested regarding collective goods. We're almost done with part 4. Let's just add a few more minutes. It's already 1:58 a.m. in my time, no, sa computer. Let's add a few more minutes. The principles of social doctrine offer a framework. So by the way, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. The principles of social doctrine offer a framework for understanding this new reality. In a world where data, computational resources, and regulatory influence remain in the hands of a few, to speak of the common good means exposing this new form of epistemic, economic, and political asymmetry and naming the new monopolies of AI. To speak of the universal destination of goods means finding ways of ensuring universal access to both technologies and the education needed to use them. To speak of subsidiarity calls for protecting the ability of communities to make choices and corrections rather than confining their role to mere oversight after the standards have been set elsewhere. To speak of solidarity obliges us to recognize the hidden, often exploited workers who sustain algorithmic systems. To speak of justice requires questioning the global distribution of power that decides who in fact can train these models and who is merely subjected to them. Likewise, it means acknowledging that social justice is not only a goal to be safeguarded after technologies are deployed, but a condition that must shape their very design from the outset. Finally, I would like to employ the expression to disarm, which is close to my heart. Disarming AI means freeing it from the mentality of armed competition, which today is not limited simply to the military context, but is also an economic and cognitive phenomenon. This entails a race for ever more powerful algorithms and larger data sets, driven by the desire to secure geopolitical or commercial dominance. To disarm means discrediting the assumption that technical power automatically confers the right to govern. To disarm does not mean rejecting technology, but preventing it from dominating humanity. It means freeing technology from monopolistic control and opening it to discussion and debate, therefore making it human-friendly and restoring it to the plurality of human cultures and ways of life. Our task today is not only ethical or technical, it is ecological in the deepest sense, for it concerns a new dimension of our common home. AI is already an environment in which we are immersed, as well as a force with which we must engage. For this reason, merely regulating it is insufficient. It must be disarmed, welcoming, and accessible. Okay, let this paragraph that I'm going to read be the last paragraph for part 4. It is paragraph 111. So, I wish to address a special appeal to those who develop artificial intelligence. In one sense, technological innovation can represent human participation in the divine act of creation. Developers, therefore, bear a particular ethical and spiritual responsibility, for every design choice reflects a vision of humanity. Just as the creator of an artistic or literary work must consider the values it conveys, so developers are called to embed values in their projects with due seriousness, with transparency, responsibility toward affected communities, and careful attention to ensuring that what is being cultivated is a genuine good. We will continue this later, probably tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, hopefully, God willing. And we will continue with paragraphs 112. It has a subheading of what must not be lost. Okay, please pray for this endeavor, that this will continue. After reading Magnifica, Humanitas, I plan to read some more. So this is 2 in 1, probably 3 in 1. So because I haven't read this document, so it's me reading the document and at the same time helping you read the document as you read with me, as you listen. And probably after listening with me, you can reread the document for yourself, and it will be easier to absorb because it will be your second time. And this is a good thing. So it's like 2 in 1, hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. For some people who love birds, sorry. So hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. And I hope this will be, it will be good for us. For me, actually, it will be good for me because I'm reading, and because I'm reading also for you, it encouraged me to read, to be what do you call this? to be persevering, no, in reading. So again, thank you for being with me, reading with me. And next part will be part 5, starting with paragraph 112. Thank you for listening. God bless, and please pray for me and my family. Thank you so much.